Hello and welcome to the AI Governance and Data Security Show.
Hosted by Nikki Chapple and Ryan John Murphy.
Your go-to source for practical insights on securing Microsoft 365 and Gen AI. In each episode, we're joined by Microsoft experts, MVPs, and industry leaders.
If you want to understand what it really takes to secure AI,
you're in the right place.
Let's get started. Hello and welcome everyone to the AI Governance and Data Security Show. My name is Nikki Chapple. I'm a Microsoft MVP and a Principal Cloud Architect at Cloudway and work in everything Microsoft Purview, data security, governance and compliance, and obviously the hot topic in this day and age, AI. And I'm always joined by my co-host, Ryan. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you very much, Nikki. Yes, everybody, my name is Ryan John Murphy, if you don't know me already. I have been back at Microsoft now for almost 3 years. I've been working with Purview since the very beginning, right back in 2014, 2015, I think, far from the product that we have today. I'm also a former Microsoft MVP. And as you can see, welcome back to the show, Anders. Good to see you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Anders Olsson from Sweden, also data security specialist. Also, I've been working with what is today called Purview, RMS technology, and IRM was another thing back then, for example. So also experience of doing all the implementation and helping customers to getting better control of their data.
Indeed, and also enjoying the sun, I can see.
Yeah, vacation periods. Working for a company called Onevinn, but for the moment I have 5 weeks vacation, spending the time at home. For the moment it's a little bit, well, talk about the cloud, but the plan is to take the kids to the beach after this.
Oh, bless. Amazing.
So today we've got a really exciting topic and it's top of mind for a lot of people, AI and this today.
Yeah, I think that would be a good topic. I mean, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but I think it's more than 5 years Microsoft released a fund. That could be a good topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this is something that has been a fast adopter from customers, specifically in my area, right? And I think, Nikki, we spoke about this before. Anders, I've seen some of your work that you've done on this in the background with blogs and LinkedIn posts and everything else. And if anybody hasn't watched the 2 episodes with Talamir and Maitili, then go and watch them because, this is a huge topic at this moment in time. But DSPM, and specifically, I will use the classic name DSPM for AI, or AI observability as it's known now, is absolutely front and center for customers. I've literally just come off a call with a customer here and they're pretty new to this space and they're thinking, okay, we have user to agent interactions, we have agent to agent interactions, we also have user to shadow AI interactions and Gen AI interactions internally. And I think one of the biggest things that they took away from that session is DSPM in itself doesn't really care about if you're first party, third party AI, procured AI, or developed AI. We can bring that visibility in. And I think not only having it there for within an artifact or an information card for you to view and understand what's happening, but I think the automation remediation piece in the background also plays a really heavy part of understanding and then acting upon that. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I totally agree. And the only thing that I think a lot of people are missing is that DSPM as a tool is a great tool to identify, for instance, new risky behaviors, risk detection of data leakage and so on. But they haven't done the groundwork before. I mean, the DSPM is on top of everything else. So what I do like with the new DSPM, the new unified DSPM, is a posture feature that do recommendations. If you haven't done labeling, do labeling. If you haven't detecting your sensitive data, try to build your sensitive information type, use the trademark classifiers. But I do like the recommendation in that portal as well to direct the customers how to use the solution. And also the integration. I mean, back in the days before DSPM, we did this manually. We used KQLs in Sentinel to combine signals, for instance, using the Entra signals to detect risky sign-ins in combination with, for instance, risky actions with sensitive data, for example. The same goes for Defender and integration with Purview to detect if you have risky device accessing sensitive content, for example. We did that with KQLs. Now we have it built in if you do the correct integration, if you do the correct settings in the portal. So that's really a really big thing to do all these activations of analytics capabilities in the solutions, to use insider risk management solutions to get signals from Entra, to get signals from Defender, for example. Because if that is in place already, getting that data in the DSPM portal and can recommend you to do the posture management, I mean, detecting risk signals in advance or in the early stage before data leakage are really happening.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think you raised some good points there, Anders. And I think we can talk about the reporting a little bit later on. That's available now inside of DSPM at the bottom, which are all customizable and therefore you also. But you're absolutely right. I think we're now moving into a centralized space with Purview around that risky AI usage. And it can be, as I mentioned before, it can be to put together a responsible AI usage program of work. It can be to mature it. It can be made to ensure that it's being followed. But I think for those users that do want to abuse the service for their own purpose, let's say, for example, detect that anomaly where somebody's gone to a SharePoint site where they haven't gone to before and tried to reason over 50 documents that have got 50 credit cards in, that behavior right now is there for you in that single pane of glass. Whereas before, I completely agree with you. There would have to be a number of solutions sewn together, potentially with, quite long custom query language in the background and logic apps to provide you with that information in a different source, in a different solution like Teams or email. Now all of that is right there for you in a single pane of glass. It's brilliant, I think.
And as where you were talking about, you need to go and configure it. I think that's a really important fact. There are things that are available out of the box, but to really get value out of it, you really got to spend that time thinking what's important for you. What information do you want? Because there's so many signals and things coming in. You don't want to have that analysis paralysis. So it is really worth focusing on and prioritizing on kind of what matters most for your organization, the most risky data. You still have to do some thinking yourself as an organization in that initial customization.
Agreed.
I totally agree. And one thing that I think is really important to mention as well is you have all this built-in detection of data. All this, I think it's 330 the information type that is built into the portal for the moment. And I mean, we have a lot of detection of data that is totally based on where you're based, which country you have users in, for example. And there is a lot of noise with all that, because as soon as you open a large document, a large PDF with 90 pages, you will see that you have New Zealand social numbers, or you will have driving license from Colombia, for example, and that's just false positives. I do recommend everyone that have started to do the work of what data are important for us as a company to visit within the DLP and classifiers. You have a new feature called collections policy, where you can create policies where you can exclude what is not relevant for you as a company, for example. This means that you can reduce the noise. You will not see New Zealand information anymore if you don't have employees in New Zealand. You can just exclude that. And that will act on everything that's collected from Endpoint DLP, for example. So as soon as you're starting to open a file on your endpoint, you will start classifying these files and looking for content. If you reduce and take away all the New Zealand information or India or whatever country where you don't have users, you will have a more valid detection of data. That will also combine and will be visible in the DSPM as well. That's a huge recommendation, because that will give you another view in DSPM. Within 30 days, you will get a totally other view of what data it detects in your environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think collection policy, yeah, I completely agree, Anders. And I think, now you've mentioned that, I think they are underutilized quite a lot, collection policies. I think from a perspective of understanding A, that they're there, and B, what they do, and C, the information that they provide back. You're absolutely right. You can really start to fine tune that information and refine that information that DSPM is picking up. And it works with other solutions as well. So you can really zone in on what matters to you, rather than, as your prior example, a big document with a lot of sits in and a lot of noise in. You're really focused on what matters to you. That in itself, I think, grows your responsible AI usage, not only as an admin, but also as a user, because you're really zoned in on that sensitive information, most confidential information, IP, organizational information, whatever a case may be, however you want to topicalize it based on the industry you work in. That, to me, if you want to look at it from a perspective of that's the clean sheet you need to ensure DSPM is giving you what you actually need as an organization.
Yeah, totally agree. And also the whole DSPM with all these great reports in the tool itself, it's a really good thing to get input from your business by showing what possibilities we have in the solution. Because I guess you agree, Nick. It's always hard for a new client to detect information owners and get the input from the business. And I have successful showing the solutions to a lot of potential information owners, so they can see what possibilities we have with the solution, especially when it comes to AI. What information is used by AI, for example. And when you have someone that is typically an unofficial information owner, where they see the capability, they are like, oh, I want to take if my information is used with that third-party AI. And with help of that, you can get their input to create your detection of their data, for example, and give them the possibility to the insight of how their data are being used by AI.
Yeah, and I think this is even more important with the EU AI Act, and there's kind of a new phase of it coming in, isn't there, in August, where you've got to identify those high risk applications. So people who don't know, the AI Act has got different levels of AI usage, from kind of general low risk through to activities where you mustn't use AI for. So really, what they're saying now is for these high risk applications or fall under the high risk, you have to do your due diligence. You have to audit them. You've had to have done a risk assessment. You have to sort of know what information comes in. Types of things that come underneath this is, things like if you're making financial decisions without a human in the loop, or insurance, or things maybe with personal identifiable data. Well, you've got some of these, out of the box SITs already. We can start seeing if that type of information is flowing into third party AIs, into agents, into your different processes. So you can start saying, oh, well, we know that's got personal data in it. Maybe we should look and see where that falls in line, the various different regulations. So this is no longer optional for us. We have to do those risk assessments. So I think DSPM is very powerful.
Totally agree. And also to get a view, I mean, I love the combination of also using the Defender for cloud apps as well to see what AI solutions are being used. I know that you had a really good talk around that, Nikki. We saw each other in Oslo, right?
Yeah, that was Workplace Ninjas Oslo, wasn't it?
View and see with what data are these being used. So for example, from the Defender Cloud apps, you can get all the URLs used by an AI solution. So with help of data security posture management, you can get the insight if certain data are being used within that AI solution. For example, if you show a business owner that you have a lot of information going to DeepSeek, and after that, okay, what data are going to DeepSeek? Then you can export all the URLs being used by DeepSeek, and then you can set up DLP rules monitoring all the data going back and forth from that solution and detect if you have sensitive data going to DeepSeek, for example. So I do love the concept. I do hope, Ryan, that there will be a function with the automatically sync of these solutions in the future. We have talked around that for many years.
Yes. I don't want to say too much, but yes, for sure. Absolutely. And I think that's the pivotal point, right? Is everything works better together, right? And I think given the fact that Microsoft own everything end to end, and we engineer everything to work and, together, like the fidelity of the data, why wouldn't you want to discover and protect and defend the data as close to the source as possible, right? We are leaning into that. I'm, maybe I'm being biased because I'm a Microsoft fanboy, but I definitely think we're best of platform right now. And that's only going to get better with the more integration and solutions built upon solutions and so on and so forth. I mean, let's take your Gen AI Defender for Cloud App scenario there. That same Gen AI list is available to Endpoint DLP. You just need to go in and enable it. And whichever URL that's being used in the cloud apps, that, these companies, I won't name them, that are very, very clever, just spin up lots of tiny URLs for people to circumvent proxies and so on and so forth to gain access to that. If you've got that same list enabled in Endpoint DLP, it stops at the device level. So it doesn't even need to go through to the traffic through the proxy layer as well. So yeah, I don't want to say too much there because I love my job here, but that's probably a way we're going, Anders.
Yeah, sounds really good. Yeah, and I mean, a lot of things can be done manually. I think, first of all, before DSPM, many of these capabilities were already in place. But you need to do the work by yourself instead of using DSPM. For example, you have always been possible to create URL lists, for example, create DLP rules monitoring traffic going back and forth to different URLs. Have been in place ever since Endpoint DLP was released. A lot of these capabilities, as long as you are aware of what are the risks and what do you want to achieve, a lot of things can be done. And especially with Endpoint DLP, that's my favorite, all the DLP solutions. What do you say, Nikki? Same for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's that observability. I've kind of been working on this thing recently. Data trust equals visibility times governance times evidence. And if one of those three things is missing, then you have no data trust. And, endpoint DLP, people say, oh, I don't want to switch it on. I don't want to disrupt the users. I said, well, just put it in simulation mode. Just put it in order only mode, because you can't govern what you can't see. And having, endpoint DLP, looking at these different things, you can start identifying what your risks are. Unknown unknowns can't be managed.
And I think that's especially important with shadow AI. Definitely. I think having DSPM, Endpoint DLP, there is that way of giving you those metrics in that simulation mode. And I think, as a side topic, a lot of customers look at DLP and think, I have to have it turned on. You don't. You understand what's happening first, whether it be inline or in transit. Then you make the decision via those matches that you've got inside of it before you turn them on. And I absolutely agree. Endpoint DLP is absolutely my favorite one because there's so much going on. There's so much you can do with it. But back to topic, I think those two are relevant. Like I say, DSPM, Endpoint DLP, when it comes to shadow AI. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Endpoint DLP is the one monitoring all traffic going back and forth from your device, not only to URLs, also to apps, for example. Meaning if you install a third-party AI app on your desktop or your Windows device or your Mac device, you can monitor what traffic going back and forth, what files are being copied into that app, for example. All these are possible with Endpoint DLP, and that's what DSPM are being using in the background as well.
Yeah, because that's some of the recommended policies, isn't it, for the AI posture? You'll see if you go in there to start off with some of these ones for the third-party AI apps, but you'll just say not configured, and you don't see that. You see Copilot graphs, beautiful, but you don't see the third-party ones until you put these DLP policies on. They're one click, they're in monitor-only mode, so therefore they're just on it, auditing and capturing the audit information. It's giving you visibility, see the sensitive data, and then you can start to remediate.
Yeah, indeed. One of the other things I love as well about DSPM, just based on that, Nikki, Anders, is it also shows you where content is not labeled. Because the amount of times we've looked at documentation and we've kind of gone into that analysis paralysis of everything has to be labeled. Now, I do agree. The more labeling you have, the more classifiers you've set up, because I think those two are your key source anchors into pretty much everything in Purview. That will give you a proficient Purview deployment. However, in DSPM, you do get that not labeled metadata. Now, if you take that and you can map that to documentation that has had sensitive information types found in it. So if you're clever enough in DLP to say, okay, I will allow you to share this document because it's not labeled. However, in part of that condition, you've got not labeled, but has these sensitive information types in it, you've still got yourself covered from that shadow AI leak potentially. That's one of the things I really love about DLP from Microsoft.
Yeah, and also the possibility in DSPM to actually act on data at rest, doing the scanning or assessment of your environment, where you can identify if you have oversharing of files, for example. And if you enable the file level detection, you can even take actions on your data at rest, remove sharing links to a certain file. You can set labels on certain files directly from DSPM. I love that feature. Really good one.
That's really important, because when I work with organizations, they've got millions of files, thousands of SharePoint sites. But let's focus on identify which ones are the high risk ones belong to HR and finance and the board. And you can start from remediating those.
Yeah, I was going to mention if anyone have missed the new view of Activity Explorer in the new DSPM, have a look, because we have a lot of features or filters in that Activity Explorer that isn't visible if you go to Activity Explorer from information protection, the labeling part, also the DLP part. In DSPM, you will have risky activities directly in the Activity Explorer, meaning you can filter Activity Explorer on risky users, or if you want to have a filter that's collecting employees email themselves, for example, we can get that filtered directly in Activity Explorer in DSPM. That was a really good thing that was introduced in the new DSPM portal. So if anyone have missed that part, have a look.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing to end this episode to say, if you've not looked at the new DSPM, go and take a look at these reports that are there. You've got the capability of customizing your own reports. And as Anders just said, go into the Activity Explorer. There's lots of filters there. You can really start to get a really good idea of what's happening in your tenant.
Yeah, just on the reporting thing as well, we will be having somebody on in the future, in the next couple of weeks. We're hoping to schedule the person in. Very busy here at Microsoft, swapping over from our financial years and so on and so forth. But we do have somebody coming on to talk specifically about reporting, the default ones and the custom reporting. So keep an eye out for that, because I've talked to this individual a number of times now, and it's phenomenal what you can do in there from a reporting perspective. So absolutely, Nikki, I completely agree with you. What a great place to end.
Thank you very much, Anders, for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your vacation, and thank you all the viewers and listeners for joining us today. And if you haven't already subscribed, please make sure you do so. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Anders. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for having me. Have a great summer.
You too, man.